Let yourself be great. Unleash your soul. Take your passion, make it happen. That's the goal.
And welcome to another edition of Two Steps Ahead podcast, encouraging you to take your passion, make it happen. Let yourself be great. I'm Son Edom. If you've been with us the last couple of podcast episodes, we've been talking about pillars of character. In episode 249, which is 2 episodes ago, we talked about the pillar of respect and the respect crisis that we might be experiencing in society today. And then our last episode, episode 250, we talked about trustworthiness, something that's a little bit different than trust. And that's episode 250. So you can go to our website, radiowarp.com. That's radio, W-A-R-P, radiowarp.com. Click on the Two Steps Ahead podcast logo, and you can find those shows. You can also just do an internet search, Two Steps Ahead podcast, episode 249 or episode 250, and it pops up, and you can listen anywhere you listen to podcasts. So if you want to kind of get caught up on what we've been discussing, that's how you can do it. So today we're going to talk about fairness. It's the character test that nobody escapes. Everybody wants fairness until it costs them something, costs me something, costs you something. We all want fairness, right? We want fair treatment. We want fair opportunities, fair judgment, fair consequences, fair rules, fair leadership, and it goes on and on. Relationships, workplaces, schools, churches. We just want a fair society when it comes down to it. But it can get uncomfortable. Most people love fairness when they're the ones being mistreated. So it's easy to look at fairness from the perspective of the lens of being unfair when it affects us or something that we have interest in. We love fairness when we feel overlooked. We love fairness when somebody else gets that special treatment, don't we? We love fairness when the victim, or I should say, we're the victim of a double standard. Don't we all just love those double standards? We love fairness when someone else gets away with something that we would have been punished for. But the real test of fairness is not how loudly we demand fairness when we are being hurt. No, that's not the case at all. The real test is whether we practice fairness when we have the advantage. So fairness always comes from the disadvantaged part or point of view or perspective. Hey, that's not fair. They get to do that. You hear it in schools all the time, right? Little kids, students, hey, that's not fair. Or maybe if you have kids, hey, that's not fair. Why do they get to stay up later? Or why do they get to do this? Or why do they get to do that? It's always the person crying foul is the one that is being so-called disadvantaged. But the real test is whether we practice fairness when we have the advantage. Are you fair when you're the boss? When you're the parent? What about teachers? Are you fair as a teacher? As a coach? Maybe as a pastor? We automatically think pastors are fair, right? But that's not always the case, is it? What about just leaders in general? Are you fair when you're a leader, leading a group, whether it's a business or something else? When we're the favorite, that's a little bit different than favoritism. Maybe favoritism plays into fairness or unfairness, but are we fair to others when we're the favorite? And when we're the ones that have the final say, are we fair in that final say? Because fairness is easy to demand, but hard to practice. Fairness is easy to demand, but hard to practice. Fairness can ask, or actually probably does ask or should ask, can I apply the same standard to myself as I do to others? Can I correct someone I like? That's a tough one, isn't it? Can I show mercy to someone I dislike? It's hard to correct someone you like, but it's easy to judge and jump on someone that you don't like, right? Now, can you try doing the opposite? Can I listen before I judge? That's hard to do in society today. Everybody judges before they find out what the truth is. The story is always different, right? You watch it on the news, and the story is always different a couple days later than the initial narrative. Can I hold people accountable without humiliating them? Can I show compassion without excusing harm? Can I protect the vulnerable without twisting the truth? Can I tell the truth even when the truth costs me something? Again, fairness. And that's why fairness matters. Because when fairness disappears, trust disappears. It's always interesting whether it's respect from a couple episodes ago, whether it was trustworthiness from our last episode, or now here fairness. Whenever one of those things disappears, there's always something else that's a positive quality in life that disappears with it. So in this case, when fairness disappears, trust disappears. When people believe the rules change depending upon who is involved, then trust begins to die. When the favorites are protected, trust begins to die. When leaders punish outsiders but excuse insiders, trust begins to die. When powerful people avoid accountability, trust begins to die. When people, or should we say the quiet people, when they're ignored, trust begins to die. When people are judged before they're heard, trust begins to die. So fairness is not just about being nice. It's moral consistency. It's truth without cruelty, mercy without denial, accountability without humiliation, power used with humility, its correction given with dignity, its rules applied without favoritism. And maybe the question today is not simple. Maybe it's not just asking, have I been treated fairly? But maybe the deeper question is, am I fair when fairness costs me something? So again, the question isn't, have I been treated fairly? The question we're looking at today is, am I fair when fairness costs me something? And that is the topic of discussion. So what fairness? What's fairness? Have you ever thought about it? Have you ever sat down? I know we all think, hey, that's not fair, but really, what is fairness? Well, it's the practice of treating people with honesty, with consistency, with dignity, with wisdom, and appropriate accountability. That's what fairness is. But it's often misunderstood nowadays, isn't it? A lot of people think fairness means everyone gets the exact same thing. We see that from the government. We see that from others, maybe social groups. People scream it from the hilltops on social media. Fairness, everyone gets the exact same thing. No, fairness is the practice of treating people with honesty, consistency, dignity, wisdom, and appropriate accountability. Fairness does not always mean sameness. Sometimes fairness means equal treatment. Sometimes fairness means appropriate treatment. Sometimes fairness means give someone help because they need support. Sometimes it means holding someone accountable because they caused harm. Fairness sometimes means giving mercy, saying no, giving someone else another chance, or not giving another chance until there is real change. You see, it's not a one-size-fits-all. We talk about that a lot on the podcast, these one-size-fits-all answers, right? That's not the case. We have to look at the circumstances, find out what is going on, and then we can make a decision on what is fair. A lot of people compare fairness and equality. Equality, a big word nowadays. Equality means everybody gets the same thing. Does that sound fair? Everyone gets the same thing? Well, that's what equality says. Everybody gets the same thing. But fairness asks whether people are receiving what is right, appropriate, honest, and just. For example, let's say you're a teacher, okay? You're in the classroom and you're trying to be fair. Fairness does not mean that every student receives the exact same support. One student may need extra help reading. Another may need advanced work because maybe they're ahead of the game. Another may need accommodations. Maybe there's a learning disability involved. Maybe another needs behavior support. Just because you have different types of students, different types of people in the classroom, that doesn't automatically make the classroom unfair. Fairness means that the students have a real chance to learn. So whether your student has a behavior support, you're going to treat it accordingly. I look at teachers, especially people in special education. And I've done it before too. I've done long-term subbing jobs or long-term support jobs with students that are special education. And sometimes they can be really great because you're pulling a student out of class and you're going and playing games. You're going and doing other things, not academic, because the student needs a break from that. It's in their IEP or something, okay? And so you're going and you're playing games and you're doing puzzles and doing some fun stuff. Kind of kills a good 15 minutes or whatever the accommodation says or whatever the requirement is. And other students might look at that and say, hey, that's not fair. They get to go do puzzles and games, but that's the support because that is what the student needs. Otherwise, the student wouldn't be able to handle learning, wouldn't be able to be in the classroom learning. Maybe some people can't read. I've dealt with a lot of students, a couple, in fact, specifically this past school year. They can't read at all. Ask them to read a couple sentences and they can't. They can barely get out a word or two. Is it fair to pull them out and get them some reading support so that they can learn? Or what about the students that are advanced, that are academically achieving things? Should we hold them back? Or should we allow them to continue to learn and take what God has given them and run with it? So when you look at fairness from the standpoint that every student has a real chance to learn, then you're going to specialize and cater to those needs that helps the student learn. And you have to do it the right way, in the right place. How about in the workplace? Fairness doesn't mean every employee receives the same pay or the same promotion. How many times you hear people, we hear it all the time now, people are complaining. I don't get the same pay as somebody else. Someone else is making more than me. We need to tax the billionaires and millionaires because how unfair it is that they have all the money in the world. But aren't those the people providing the jobs for the rest of us? Different roles, different experiences, different responsibilities, and different performance levels do matter. If someone has an advanced degree, let's say a PhD in something, not saying that you automatically have a PhD means you automatically have smarts or intelligence. But let's just go with the fact that everything in this conversation is credible. Would not somebody that has an advanced PhD in an area require more pay than someone that just has a bachelor's degree? A master's degree, would that not require more pay than someone with just a bachelor's degree? What about years of experience? I know a lot of teachers that come out of college and they're gung-ho to be teachers, but they have very little in the classroom experience. Should they get the same as a veteran teacher? What's fair? Fairness doesn't mean that the standards should be clear. I'll check that. Fairness does mean the standards should be clear. Wow, that's a big difference, right? When you say one thing or the other. So yeah, fairness means the standards should be clear, the process should be honest, and the opportunities should not be rigged. That's why a lot of times, if you're in the academic world, you see a scale of years experience, or maybe years experience goes down, and education, how many educational units you've earned. And then there's a sliding scale based on that. Fairness. So you know that your education and your years experience will get you this much money. Now there's no favoritism involved. The process, or I should say the standards, very clear. This many years of experience, this much education, I match it up, and that's how much money I make. The process is honest. You have an opportunity to go back to school and get more education. Seems fair, not rigged, right? It's harder maybe in business, maybe in sales. People that make more money in sales, maybe they get promoted up the rank a little bit to assistant sales manager, then the sales manager, and then regional sales manager, and so on, because maybe they're putting in the work and maybe they're getting a bigger return, bringing in more money for the company. Well, you could do that too, could you not? So maybe that's fair. But you look at fairness versus equality. What about fairness versus getting your own way? This is something that's extremely important in today's society because not every disappointment is injustice. People like to think that, but it's not. Not every disappointment is injustice. Sometimes people say, hey, that's not fair. What they really are saying is that I did not get what I wanted. I did not get my own way. A student may get a low grade and call it unfair, even though the rubric was clear and the work was incomplete. How many teachers deal with that? An employee may not get promoted and call it unfair, even though someone else is more qualified. We hear that a lot, don't we? And there is some to it. There are some people that, get promoted, get an advancement, get some sort of favoritism, we can call it, and maybe they don't deserve it. But we're just talking in truth here. An athlete may not start, call it unfair, even though another player earned the position. A child may be disciplined, call it unfair, even though the consequence was clear. We see that in the justice system all the time. We see that in society. The news headlines are full of people that are not getting the punishment that they deserve, walking away and going and committing more crimes. Consequences are clear, but yet the judges and the judicial system, and so that makes it unfair for the victims. Fairness does not mean everyone's going to like the outcome. You might not like the outcome. It might not go your way. Doesn't mean it's an injustice. Doesn't mean something was wrong. Fairness means the process can stand in the light. It can be judged. It can be transparent. If you deal with fairness, if you look at fairness and you can compare it to telling the truth or lying, people tell you that if you're not lying, if you're telling the truth, then you don't have to remember all the lies. And all the lies then get distorted, and eventually you're going to slip up and not remember all the lies. And then the truth's going to come out anyways, and there's going to be consequences, right? Well, that's the same with fairness. If you are fair in the way you do things, in the way you run your business, and the way you run your classroom, and the way you do things, if you're just fair with people altogether, then you won't have to worry about, sure, people might clamor and they might scream and yell and call unfair and other things. But if you know that you're dealing with fairness, look how the process was. This person got the promotion because of these reasons. This person gets more pay because of these reasons. It's pretty fair. What about fairness versus favoritism? Favoritism is one of fairness's greatest enemies. We've already alluded to it a little bit. Favoritism says, one rule for my friends, another rule for strangers. One rule for the talented, another rule for the average. One rule for the popular, another rule for the average. How many times through school did popular people get away with things? We see it in movies all the time, especially those coming of age movies where the popular person, popular student kind of gets away with some things. One rule for the powerful, another rule for the powerless. Another thing we see in society today, the powerful, Congress, people that have authority, supposedly, maybe even police officers and others, they have one rule and another rule for the commoners. And then how about one rule for my side and another for your side? See, that is not fairness. That would be corruption wearing a smile. And that smile might look like the Joker in Batman. So if the standard changes depending on who did it, it was never really a standard. It was a preference. Did you get that? If a standard changes depending on who did it, it was never really a standard. It was a preference. Do you have standards? Or do you have preferences? So what does fairness look like in everyday life? It's not just a courtroom idea. It shows up every day in our lives. It shows up in the tone we use. It shows up in how quickly we judge people. It shows up whether we listen or not. It shows up on how we treat people who cannot benefit us. It shows up in who we excuse and who we condemn. How about in conversation? Do we twist people's words? Do we interrupt just to win an argument? So if you want to be fair in these conversations, don't interrupt just to win. Don't twist people's words. Don't assume motives. Don't take one sentence and build an entire accusation around it. Don't listen only long enough to prepare for your comeback. Listen. A fair conversation sounds like, help me understand what you meant. Let me make sure I heard you correctly. I may disagree, but I want to be fair to your point. I reacted too quickly. I did not have the full story, which is common today. An unfair conversation sounds like you always do this. You never care. I know exactly why you did that. I do not need to hear your side. This is not what happened, but I'm going to keep saying it anyways. We get a lot of that in society today, too. This isn't what happened, but we're going to keep repeating the story over and over. The news, the mainstream media is notorious for that. Fairness in conversation means I'm more committed to the truth than victory. Are you committed more to truth than victory? Most people today are committed to victory over truth. What about fairness in family? Family is one of the first places we learn about fairness and unfairness, isn't it? A child learns fairness when parents keep their word. They learn fairness when discipline is consistent. A child learns fairness when they're heard before being judged. They learn fairness when one sibling is not always blamed and the other is not always excused. But it can be subtle in the family dynamic, can it? One child becomes responsible one as they carry more than they should. One child becomes the difficult one. They're blamed for everything first off before the investigation. One child is the favorite. They receive more grace than everyone else. One spouse's feelings always matter more than the others. One family member is expected to apologize while the other never owns anything. Does that sound like you? Does that sound like your family? Are you going through anything of that sort? Do you have people labeled that way? That creates resentment. And here's the powerful truth. Sometimes unfairness happens when the reliable person gets punished for being reliable. Sometimes unfairness happens when the reliable person gets punished for being reliable. Sometimes unfairness happens when the reliable person gets punished for being reliable. The responsible child gets more chores. The dependable employee gets more work. The mature friend is expected to understand everything. The quiet person gets ignored because they do not want to create drama. That is not fairness, my friends. Fairness recognizes responsibility without exploiting it. Do you exploit family members? What about fairness in friendship? Friendship fairness means that care goes in both directions. An unfair friendship would look something like this. One person always vents but never listens. One person always chooses the plans. One person expects loyalty but gives criticism. One person wants grace for their mistakes but judgment for yours. One person disappears when you need them but expects you to show up immediately for them. If you have a friend like that, you should probably walk away because they're probably not a friend or a true friend at all. A fair friendship does not mean everything is perfectly equal every day, but it does mean there is mutual respect, shared effort, honesty, and care. Mutual respect, shared effort, honesty, and care. Something that we should be doing in everyday life anyways, right? What about in social media? Social media is probably the most unfair place in modern life. People judge clips without context. They believe accusations without evidence. They reduce people to one moment. They demand destruction before truth is known, canceling people out. They give mercy to people they like and outrage to people they dislike. Social media often gives people the feeling of justice without the discipline of truth. A fair person would slow down. A fair person would ask, do I know the whole story? Have I heard both sides? Am I reacting to facts or emotions? Would I want people to judge me this quickly? The first version of the story is not always the full story. If you've ever followed the show regularly, you'll see that when we discuss things on the show, it's not immediate. It might be a couple days or an episode later that we go back and discuss things because the story, the narrative that comes out is usually wrong, and it will usually take a few days for the truth to come out. And then once the truth comes out, the narrative that was initially established is far from the truth. And we see it all the time in the news, on social media, and perhaps maybe in our life. What about fairness in the workplace and in school? Could that be one of the areas that we feel fair versus unfair the most? Could be. So fairness in the workplace means employees are treated with respect, consistency, honesty, dignity, and appropriate accountability. Think about a time you had a boss, if you've had more than one job. What made this boss a good boss and what made this boss a bad boss? Well, it's probably or maybe we should put it this way. What made you respect this boss and not respect this boss? Maybe that's a better way of putting it. It was probably the way you were treated, right? And the way the boss was consistent in whatever the boss was doing and saying, maybe running the company or leading the group. The boss was honest, dealt with you in an honest manner. There was a dignified relationship between the two of you and appropriate accountability on both sides. And the boss screwed up, they admitted it. When you screwed up, they'd call you out on it, and hopefully you admitted it. And again, when you go to the workplace, it's not always about the employees getting the same pay, the same role, the same schedule, the same promotion, the same praise. It's going to change depending upon who you are, what your job is. So if someone's getting more pay or a promotion or whatever it might be, you might think it's unfair, but really, it might not be. But you know what is fair? It's fair when expectations are clear for everyone. That's fair. When rules are consistent and applied evenly to everyone. That's fair. The process of honesty. That's fair. When leaders don't play favoritism or play favorites. That's fair. When your effort is noticed. That's fair. When mistakes are corrected fairly. That's fair. Opportunities are not rigged. Everybody has a chance to get that promotion. People are treated like human beings, not tools. That's fair. Because the workplace can be demanding. They can demand of you and still be fair. The boss can correct people and still be fair. A promotion can go to someone else and it still be fair. But when people believe the process is dishonest, secretive, biased, inconsistent, then morale collapses because people think things are unfair. So the workplace and workplace fairness should have clear expectations. Whether it's what the job requires, how a performance is evaluated, what behavior is accepted and unaccepted, what earns someone a promotion, what leads to discipline, and how decisions are made. If those expectations are out there for everyone to see, then that's fair. The other thing about workplace fairness, there's consistent accountability. If one employee is being disciplined for being late, the favored employee should not be excused from that same behavior. If one employee is corrected for poor communication, another should not be protected because they are popular, productive, or connected. And that's something you can do if you're running a business, running a family, running a home. Just be fair. Establish some fair guidelines. Make sure the expectations, that's the word, expectations. In life, make sure the expectations are clear. If the expectations are clear, then fairness will prevail. Workplace fairness looks like fair opportunity. Workplace fairness looks like honest recognition. Do not reward responsibility with exhaustion. Okay, if you're having an honest recognition and somebody's really working hard and doing whatever it is they're doing and they earn that expectation or they earn that recognition, don't expect them to do more and more and more without further compensation or whatever you're going to do, making them work harder to the point of exhaustion. That's not fairness, but honest recognition. What about fairness in school? Well, it's pretty much the same thing. Students are treated with consistency, with dignity, with clarity, with patience, and appropriate support. We talked about a little bit earlier in an example, right? You have a classroom and you have some behavior people, you have some learning disability people, you have some high achievers, and then you have the rest of us. And we talked about how there might be different needs for different people to have that fairness in learning. And that's what it is, appropriate support. So not every student is going to get the same grade. Not every student is going to get the same amount of help. Not every student is going to avoid a consequence. And it doesn't mean that students always like the outcome. But they're treated with consistency, with dignity, with clarity, with patience, and appropriate support. It means every student in school has a legitimate chance to learn, to grow, to be heard, and to be evaluated honestly. If you're a teacher and you have a grudge against a student, well, then why are you teaching? Get out. I see it throughout the years in all my teaching. I've seen both sides of it. I've seen teachers that genuinely are fair. I think I'm fair when I'm grading. And I've seen teachers that have grudges and they grade harsher, or expectations become harder for someone they don't like. And you see it all the time too. And you can see it a lot in the world of special education, the divide between classroom teachers and special education teachers. The classroom teacher gets tired of the special education student, the one with the accommodations and the different things that they do. They get tired of it, so they hold a grudge and they hate those students. I've seen it. And then on the flip side, I've seen other teachers do great in a diverse academic environment. Depends on the person. But you need to ask yourself, are you teaching? Are you treating your students with consistency, with dignity, with clarity, with patience, and giving them appropriate support? Are you making sure that every student has a legitimate chance to learn, to grow, to be heard, and to be evaluated honestly? And only you can answer that question. School fairness looks like clear rubrics. Students should know what quality work looks like. A fair teacher will explain. These are the requirements. This is how it will be graded. Strong work will include. Weak work lacks this. This is when it's due. This is what happens when it's late or incomplete. A student cannot meet a standard they're never taught to see. So if you haven't instructed a student on something, how they expect to do it. This was huge. This is something I see all the time in the coaching world, especially in baseball. Because baseball, maybe even football, but I'll go with baseball. That's my stronger sport. But when I would coach, I would see coaches get upset that their players could not execute something. Okay. Let's just call it double plays. Okay. We'll just do double play. Oh, let's go bunting. Let's go bunting. Bunting, for those of you that don't know, instead of fully taking a swing and trying to hit the ball, you just put the bat out front and you just try to make contact, and the ball's going to probably drop a couple feet in front of the plate. And the goal really, for the most part, is maybe just to move a runner over. You don't see it much in Major League Baseball anymore because of analytics, and sometimes you'll see it in college baseball, but it's something that's kind of becoming non-existent. But it's a pretty effective tool if you want to be competitive, in my opinion. But anyways, I've seen coaches try to get their players to bunt in a key situation, and they can't get the bunt down. Maybe they strike out, pop it up. It goes bad. And they get mad, yell, scream. And maybe they do that a couple times throughout the game. I ask the coach, hey, have you guys ever practiced bunting in practice? Have you guys ever gone over it? Or maybe you're on defense and somebody does lay a bunt down and the players don't know what to do. Everybody's running everywhere. Coach gets mad. Hey, did you practice that? Have you gone over bunt defense? Or anything for that matter? Put anything in there. No, we haven't. Well, then how you expect your players to do something if you haven't practiced it? Did you practice that play in practice for the football game? You didn't? And why are you calling it? Why are you running it? Did you practice that for basketball? No. Why are you doing it? Because if your team didn't practice it, if you did not teach your team how to do it, if you did not instruct them and show them what should be done in these situations, why are you doing it? And why you're expecting things greater of your players than of yourself when you didn't even have the decency to teach them what to do in those situations. So don't get upset at your players because they could not execute something that you did not practice. Instead, get upset at yourself and go to practice the next week and work harder and get your players up to speed and teach them and coach them, instruct them so that they can become better players. Same thing in the classroom. If your students don't know how to do something, they don't know the expectations, whatever it is, maybe you need to revisit them and not get mad at the student, but check yourself in the mirror. Did I instruct them properly? And if so, then maybe it is the students. That's where the accountability, fair accountability. But maybe before we fly off the handle and judge without knowing the whole truth, maybe we should be fair and look at ourselves. See if we were the ones that made the mistake. Are we the ones that are providing fairness through consistent grading? Fair grade might hurt, might be a C or a D, but it's fair, it's consistent, it's clear. If your grading is unfair, if it's inconsistent, if it's biased towards those students you don't like, if it's unsupported, no rubric or no clear demonstration or reason why, then maybe you lack fairness. If you're a student and you don't like the grade, doesn't automatically mean that the grading was unfair. Maybe you need to look in the mirror, and maybe you need to study more and increase your study habits. School fairness, equal dignity, and different support. Some students do need extra time. Maybe they need language support. Maybe they need help reading. Maybe they need behavior support. Maybe they need some advanced challenges because they're high achievers. Or maybe they just need encouragement, whatever it is. But fairness in school isn't giving every student the same thing. It's giving every student a real chance to learn, and whatever that might be in their specific world. High achievers probably don't need the extra help. You don't need a one-on-one with a high achiever. Maybe you give them extra assignments. People might think that's unfair, but is it really? You're challenging the mind. While the ones that maybe need a little bit more help, maybe they have a one-on-one, or maybe they're pulled into a group setting for some specialized work. Or if their behavior, maybe they're taken out because their stress, their anxiety, or whatever is on the rise and they need some cooling down time before they blow their top. So again, fairness in school is giving every student a real chance to learn. And of course, consistent discipline. So students may forget the assignment. Yeah, they will. Everybody does. But they will remember if you, the teacher, treated them fairly. Unfair discipline is public humiliation, sarcasm, inconsistency, and punishment without listening. Students will remember that. And they'll probably hold you in low regard. But if fair discipline is predictable, proportional, respectful, and connected to the behavior, students still not going to like it, but eventually they will expect that you did what you did. So what causes unfairness? Well, unfairness usually comes from just one place. It grows out of favoritism. It grows out of self-interest, out of bias, out of envy, out of emotion, and power without accountability. That is what is unfairness. Unfairness grows out of favoritism, self-interest, bias, envy, emotion, and power without accountability. Favoritism happens when personal preference overrides principle. We're easier on people we like, harder on people we dislike. Defend people who benefit us, condemn those that irritate us. Protect people who make us look good. Favoritism is dangerous because it often feels like loyalty. But loyalty without truth becomes corruption. Favoritism is never invisible as people think it is. It's pretty obvious. When you play favoritism, people are going to know. What causes unfairness besides favoritism? Self-interest. People become unfair when they protect themselves at the expense of truth. They hide facts. They shift the blame. They change the story. All of a sudden, the rules don't apply. The rules change. They demand mercy but refuse to give it. Those self-interests ask, what's going to protect me? Fairness says what is right. What causes unfairness besides favoritism and self-interest? Bias. Not seeing things clearly. Sometimes we judge people based on appearance, on background, on their personality, on their money, education, age, gender, politics, race, reputation, past mistakes. Bias can make us assume things that are not true. Fairness requires us to ask, am I reacting to facts or assumptions? Am I judging what happened or who I already believe this person is? Unfairness comes from envy. Sometimes we call unfairness, but really it's envy. Someone receives an opportunity, a promotion, relationship, recognition, whatever it is. Instead of being happy for them, we begin to question whether or not they deserved it. We get envious. Comparison can turn someone else's blessing into your personal grievance. Unfairness stems from emotion. Anger causes us to be too harsh. Fear can make us too soft. Guilt can make us avoid consequences. Pride makes us refuse correction. Embarrassment can make us punish people harder than necessary. Because emotion is real, but emotion should not be the judge. Don't lash out when you're angry. Fairness requires slowing down before deciding. I remember a story one time from my 6th grade teacher. And she was telling a story about getting upset. Because she would always, whenever she got upset, and in elementary school, the school I went to was pretty strict. There was a lot of rules, a lot of things that kids today could never survive. But in hindsight, I don't think I would change it. Maybe a few little things. But there's a lot I wouldn't change it because, first of all, it made me who I am today. And second, it has made me recognize all these things that I talk about too. But one of the things she said when it comes to discipline was she would always say, see me at recess or see me later. And she never really got outraged. But there's a time or two she would get upset. And she'd see me later, see me later. And then she brought it up. I don't know if someone asked her or if she just brought it up, why she waits till later. Because apparently there was a time when she was young, I think it was her mom, got upset at her, or someone got upset at her, and went to strike, maybe spank, whatever it is. Okay, and we're not debating that right now. But in the process of doing that, the parent or the adult swung and hit something and broke her finger, broke a couple fingers, whatever it was. And that adult learned the lesson that in anger, if you reach out like that, if she was hitting hard enough to break her fingers, then perhaps the discipline would be too harsh on the child, which was my 6th grade teacher. So she learned that lesson and has always tried to apply it, she said at the time. Pretty good lesson. You see, because at times when we lash out with emotion, anger can get us to be too harsh. Maybe the discipline is inappropriate. It's unfair. So that's why emotion needs to be in check in order to deal with fairness. Another reason for unfairness is power without accountability. People have the power, but nobody can question them. And when that happens, unfairness grows. This happens in families, definitely in churches, workplace, school, sports, coaches all the time without accountability. Politics, definitely politics, and other institutions. If a leader cannot be corrected, then they will eventually become unfair. So power does not give you permission to be unfair. Power gives you the responsibility to be more careful. Yep. Does not give you permission to be unfair. It gives you the responsibility to be more careful. What about fairness according to the Bible? Just a couple quick notes. The Bible doesn't always use the word fairness the way we use it today, but the concept is there. Throughout Scripture, there's words like justice, righteousness, mercy, impartiality, honest judgment, honest scales. Biblical fairness is not shallow. It's not getting everyone their way. It's not revenge. It's not favoritism. It's not avoiding consequence. It's not crushing people in the name of justice. It's not mercy without responsibility. Biblical fairness is justice with mercy, truth with humility, correction with dignity, accountability without favoritism, and compassion without compromise. God shows no partiality. God judges fairly. We should judge fairly. We should listen before judging. So let's take a look at the fairness test real quick as we start to kind of wrap things up here. Okay? So, here is the fairness test. Answer yourself or whatever these questions. What is the answer to these questions? And then you might determine if you're fair or not. So the fairness test. Do I apply the same standard to myself that I apply to others? When someone else is late, do I call them irresponsible? But when I'm late, I blame traffic. When someone else forgets, do I call them careless? But when I forget, do I call it an honest mistake? Because fairness means using the same dictionary for yourself and others. If they're late and it's responsible, and I'm late, it's irresponsible. So do you apply the same standard to yourself as you do to others? Ask yourself this: do I listen to both sides before judging? The first story may seem right until the other side is heard. A fair person slows down. Listen to both sides. How about question 3? Do I excuse people I like and condemn people I dislike? This is where favoritism hides. If your friend does it, it is complicated. If your enemy does it, it's unacceptable. That is not fairness. That is selective judgment. Do I care about unfairness when it benefits me? Most people notice that when unfairness hurts them, then it's unfair. But if unfairness benefits them, they don't care. Do I get special treatment? Was I protected? Was I excused? Was I promoted unfairly? Why my side is given more grace? The real fairness test is whether you still care when unfairness. The real fairness test is whether you still care when the unfairness benefits you. If the unfairness benefits you and you're okay with it, then maybe you're not really into fairness after all. Another question: do I confuse fairness with getting my way? Not every disappointment is an injustice. Do I treat people with dignity when they are wrong? Fairness does not require humiliation. You don't need to humiliate others to be fair. You can correct somebody without crushing them. Would I accept my own standard if it were applied to me? The golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If I called it unfair when it's done to me, then I should think carefully before doing it to someone else. So is fairness more about the outcome or the process? Well, it's about both. Both the process may matter more. Well, it's about both, but the process may matter more because a fair process helps people trust the outcome. People may not like the result, but if they're heard, respected, and judged by a clear standard, they're more likely to accept it. Can something be equal but still unfair? Yes. Equal means everyone gets the same thing. Fair means people receive what is right, appropriate, or needed. Treating a child, an adult, a beginner, an expert exactly the same way may be equal, but not necessarily fair. Can something feel unfair but actually be right? Yes. Sometimes accountability, correction, discipline, or disappointment feels unfair because we don't like it. But if the standard was clear, the process was honest, and the consequence was proportional, it may be fair even when it hurts. So fairness is not just about getting the outcome we want. It's about whether the process was honest, whether the standard was clear, whether the people were treated with dignity, and whether the decision was made without favoritism. Something can be equal, but still unfair because people may not always have the same needs, responsibilities, or circumstances. And something can feel unfair, but still be right because disappointment is not the same thing as injustice. This is why fairness requires wisdom. It has to consider truth, context, consistency, mercy, accountability, and dignity. And so the bottom line: fairness is not always sameness, and fairness is not always comfort. Fairness is what happens when truth, wisdom, and dignity guide the decision. Let me repeat that. Fairness is not always sameness, and fairness is not always comfort. Fairness is what happens when truth, wisdom, and dignity guide the decision. So that's something you can look at for the conversation. When it comes to fairness, are you being fair? Are you what happens when truth, wisdom, and dignity guide the decision? Do you have clear expectations for people to follow? Do they know what they are? These are questions that you have to decide for yourself. Because again, a lot of times what society says about fairness isn't fair. We've talked about the social media and other things. But if you know that you are dealing with the fairness that we're talking about today, then you should be okay. This is Two Steps Ahead podcast, encouraging you to take your passion, make it happen, let yourself be great. Check out our website, radiowarp.com. That's radio, W-A-R-P, radiowarp.com. Click on the Two Steps Ahead podcast. All of our past shows pop up. They're mostly in video form on the website. However, there is a green banner that goes across the page. If you click on that banner, it'll take you to our Podbean page, which hosts our audio website, the audio files, and you can click on that and you can listen. You can download them, take them with you on the go. But that's our website, radiowarp.com. There's also some other shows on there that you might find of interest. And then you can also listen pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can do an internet search with TWO, Two Steps Ahead podcast. You can specify which episode you'd like to hear. This happens to be episode 251. Episode 250 is about trustworthiness, and episode 249 is about respect, along this kind of pillars of character series that we're kind of doing right now. But yeah, just TWO, Two Steps Ahead podcast, and we pop up on an internet search. We're on social media, all the spaces on social media. You can DM us. If you want to reach out, you can send us an email, twostepsaheadpodcast@gmail.com. Again, TWO, twostepsaheadpodcast@gmail.com. You can reach out. I will respond. And again, the invitation is, if you feel like you're alone, if you feel like you need help, if you feel like you just need to reach out, reach out. If I can't help you, I will definitely find somebody that can help you, and you don't have to go it alone. But again, we're here for you. Reach out if you need something. Social media, we're on all the haunts, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, although you won't find me doing any type of dancing on TikTok, but you'll find the show there. And then Two Steps Ahead podcast @gmail.com. Listen anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're also on YouTube, Rumble. So we're pretty easy to find. And all you have to do then is just do an internet search and we pop up as well. So with that, I'd like to say thanks for listening. Do tell a friend. And until next time, God bless.